Hi children, in this video I will be dealing with the different steps involved in respiration. The steps involved in respiration are 1. Breathing, 2. Diffusion of gases across the alveolus, 3. Transportation of gases, and here the two gases is oxygen and carbon dioxide, 4. Diffusion of gases at the tissue level, and finally cellular respiration. Now before going into the steps involved, I am going to explain all these steps with the help of a diagram, and the diagram shows association between two systems, namely the respiratory system and the circulatory system. So by now you must be well aware of the human circulatory system with the two pathways. We call it double circulation because of the two pathways, namely the pulmonary circulation and the systemic circulation. So a recap of the two pathways. Pulmonary pathway, suppose this is the heart. If I draw the heart roughly, this is the right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle, and here I have to denote the lungs, and this side I denote the tissues. Okay, so now we will concentrate only at the pulmonary pathway, from the right ventricle to the lungs and from the lungs to the left atrium. So I am going to put it on the board. Right ventricle to the lungs and from the lungs to the left atrium. Now from the right ventricle to the lungs by the pulmonary artery, and from the lungs returning to the heart to the left atrium by the pulmonary vein. We have learned this clearly in the previous chapter. So this is the pulmonary pathway, but we have to incorporate that today. Next, the systemic pathway. Systemic pathway follow this, that is from the left ventricle it goes to the tissues, and from the tissues it gets back to the heart into the right atrium. So I am just going to jot the pathway. From the left ventricle to the tissues, and from the tissues back to the heart, that is to the right atrium. Now from the left ventricle to the tissue, it's going to the largest artery called the aorta. Then from the tissues to the right atrium, it comes through superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. You are well aware of these two pathways. Okay, so with this in mind, we are going to draw schematic representation associating the two systems. The system we are dealing now is respiratory system, but only that part of the respiratory system involved in diffusion is taken into consideration. So we are excluding the conducting part, which involves the nostrils, nasal pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, primary, secondary, tertiary, bronchioles. That and all is excluded. Only we are concerned of that region which is involved in the exchange of gases, that is the alveolus. So if I am drawing a schematic representation, a rough schematic representation of the respiratory system, just representing only the alveolus, and that too one alveolus, which is a round sac, highly vascularized, thin walled sac. Okay, so this is a representation of the respiratory system. And the circulatory system definitely cannot do away with the heart. I am drawing the entire heart. And the right side dealing with, remember, right side dealing with deoxygenated or carbon dioxide rich blood, and the left side dealing with pure blood or oxygenated blood. This is the right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. Okay, now bring our pathway. Which pathway? The pulmonary pathway. So how is the pulmonary pathway? So look, the pulmonary pathway, it is from the right ventricle to the lungs. Okay, I am using yellow to draw the pulmonary pathway. So from the right ventricle to the lungs, but we crisscross, we cross this. I am not going to cross. I am taking this side itself to the lungs. I am drawing it like tube. the lungs. So what did I draw is it's starting from the right ventricle. So what did I draw is a pulmonary artery. Oh, it's going to the lungs, and here what is represented of the lungs? Only the alveolus. Okay, now what happens at the alveolus? Exchange of gases takes place. What blood is here? The impure blood or carbon dioxide rich blood. Now what happens is carbon dioxide gets into the alveolus and oxygen from the alveolus gets into the pathway. Okay. Now we are continuing with yellow because it's pulmonary pathway. Now the supply of oxygen, and the return is by another blood vessel called the pulmonary vein. So this is representing the pulmonary vein. Okay. So up till here it is the pulmonary artery till here, and then exchange of gases takes place, and then it's taken over by the pulmonary vein. Clear? So now I drew in yellow is the pulmonary system without crisscrossing. Okay, this is a schematic representation where we can give it with exaggeration. Now I am drawing the systemic circulation with green color. Okay, systemic starting with the left ventricle, it goes to tissues, and from the tissues with the help of superior and inferior vena comes to the right atrium. So I am using green color starting with the left ventricle. Again I am not going to crisscross, this way I am not crossing, I am going this way, I am going down to represent the tissues. Here are the tissues. Okay, tissues, I will indicate some few cells, column size cells. Okay, these are the tissues. So here this is the aorta which goes to the tissues. Supply the tissue with oxygen. Okay, it's coming from here, so oxygen rich blood. And then what happens here? Oxygen from the aorta goes to the tissues, and carbon dioxide from the tissues gets into the bloodstream. Now the bloodstream, not aorta, it's continue as a superior or inferior vena cava. So I will give a common name. The vena cava carries the blood and drains it to the right atrium. This is the vena cava. Whether it's superior vena cava or inferior vena cava, both the vena cavas. Okay. Now this is a complete schematic representation associating the respiratory system and the circulatory system. And again I am telling you, respiratory system, don't think I have decreased its importance. The only part which is involved in diffusion is the alveolus. So I took an alveolus, I drew it an exaggerated version, I drew only one and big size. Okay, and circulatory system I bifurcated into the pulmonary circulation which is in yellow and the systemic circulation which is in green. Now again I am going to make changes in the color. I am not going with the coloration of giving bifurcation to systemic and pulmonary. Instead I am giving bifurcation with respect to which type of blood the blood vessel is carrying, whether it's oxygenated blood or deoxygenated blood. In another terms saying it is pure blood, impure blood. Again in still another term, oxygen rich blood or carbon dioxide rich blood. And always remember this way of bifurcation. The right deals with impure blood and the left deals with pure blood. So I am going with one color. So I am recoloring it. Okay. I am giving the key. White stands for oxygenated blood and yellow stands for deoxygenated blood or carbon dioxide rich blood. So this side is dealing with carbon dioxide rich blood. So here I am redrawing it. I hope you understood why I gave yellow to the right side. And the left side, as I indicate in the key, it should be white in color. So I am redrawing it with white. Now I am erasing the other colors. Earlier I drew it from the perspective of circulatory system, the two pathways, systemic and pulmonary, to draw the diagram. Once the diagram is drawn, here we have to emphasize the path of oxygenated blood and the path of deoxygenated blood. So, I am erasing that systemic and the pulmonary bifurcation with the two other colors which is overlapping here. Now, clearly it is indicative. This side deals with deoxygenated blood or carbon dioxide rich blood, and right here carbon dioxide rich blood, and the other side, that is the left side, deals with oxygen rich blood. Now, the diagram is complete. Now, I am referring to the figure 17.3 of your the same diagram in your text. Okay, but how to draw the diagram? You have to remember. You have to draw at one end on top the alveolus and at the other end the cells. Now, the alveolus is representing the respiratory system, and the heart. First draw the two pathways, pulmonary pathway and systemic pathway with pencil. After that, you indicate one color for oxygenated blood and the another color for deoxygenated blood. Now, with this in mind, we can go ahead. All the 5 steps can be incorporated in this, and the entire chapter can get over also. Okay, children, this is the textual diagram, figure 17.3. You have to refer, where again the diagram is well represented, associating the two systems, respiratory system and the circulatory system. Now, bringing the 5 steps. The first step is breathing. Here occurs breathing. See, this step is breathing, and very well I have explained in the previous video. The process of breathing involves inhalation and exhalation, and how this pressure gradient or volume change occurs due to the movement of the diaphragm and the ribs. That brings about both these processes, inhalation and exhalation, and in 10th standard we have learned this is a physical process in contrast to cellular respiration, which is the last. So, first step is breathing, and the last step indicating is cellular respiration. I am giving reference now because we have learnt it from what we learned. So, breathing is a physical process involving inhalation and exhalation, whereas respiration is a chemical process which is occurring in our tissues, and we know what happens in cellular respiration. I will come to it. Anyway, we have dealt with breathing the previous video, and breathing is depicted here in this part. Inspiration of oxygen rich air and exhalation of carbon dioxide rich air. That is called breathing, and the details we have learned in the previous video. So, that is the first step. Now, what is the next step? So, here you can see the next step occurs here. So, breathing was indicated in blue here, in green. That blue box indicates the next level, that is diffusion of gases. There is diffusion of gases across the alveolar membrane. Now, to be more specific, carbon dioxide from the blood gets into the alveolus, and oxygen from the alveolus gets into the bloodstream. Need not bother which blood vessel. Remember, blood and the alveolar space. It is between the alveolus, the air space in the alveolus, and the blood in the blood vessel. So, this is indicating alveolus, and this is indicating the blood vessel, and it is the exchange is taking place between the alveolar space and the blood vessel. Okay, so it is the exchange is like this way at the alveolus. Carbon dioxide from the blood gets into the alveolar space, and oxygen from the alveolus or the alveolar space gets into the blood in the blood vessel. So, remember this once again. The exchange is like this way. Carbon dioxide from the blood gets into the alveolus. So, the arrowhead is up. At the same time, this is exchanged. So, simultaneously the oxygen from the alveolus gets into the blood. Clear? So that is the second stage, that is diffusion of gases across, specify across the alveolus. And for diffusion to occur, there are three parameters that should be satisfied. So rate of diffusion depends on three parameters. One, solubility of the gases. Thickness of the diffusion membrane. And lastly, concentration gradient. So the rate of diffusion depends upon these three parameters or factors: solubility of the gases, thickness of the diffusion membrane, and the concentration gradient. Let's check. Now, solubility of the gases. We know the gases that are going to be dissolved into the plasma is oxygen and carbon dioxide. When we compare the solubility, you must have learnt in chemistry, carbon dioxide is more soluble in water compared to oxygen. Okay. Both are soluble but not highly soluble. Carbon dioxide is more soluble than oxygen. Clear? So solubility is met. Then thickness of the diffusion membrane. So let's define the diffusion membrane. For that I am zooming through the diffusion membrane. See, I have focused here on the diffusion membrane, the membranes separating the alveolus and the blood in the blood vessel are. The membrane surrounding the alveolus, we have learnt in animal tissues, which is the membrane surrounding the alveolus is the squamous epithelium. Of the alveolus. Then there is a basement membrane. And then we have the blood vessel. Blood vessel, we know the tissue is endothelium. So these three layers, if squamous is given as red color, very thin, basement is again, it's like a cementing material, very thin, and we have the endothelium of the blood vessel, which I have indicated in yellow color. These three membranes are very, very thin. They are less than 1 millimeter in thickness. All three, if we sandwich them together, they are very, very thin. It's so thin that diffusion occurs. It's not that because of these layers, squamous is serving as an hindrance and there's a basement and endothelium, it's difficult. No, it's very thin. The diffusion membrane is very, very thin. And the membrane constitute, if we list the membranes, the squamous of the alveolus, then there is a basement, and below the basement is the endothelium of the blood vessel. So all these constitute the diffusion membrane. It's very, very thin, it's not thick. So that is also satisfied. And last, the concentration gradient. Definitely we know the alveolus is rich in oxygen. So when there is oxygen more, there is a gradient created. More oxygen in the alveolus than in the blood. So there is movement of oxygen from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. Similarly, the carbon dioxide, which was rich in the blood, there is more carbon dioxide in the blood than in the alveolus. So there is movement of carbon dioxide from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. So concentration gradient is also satisfied. So these three important parameters are very important that determines the diffusion, and it's favorable because all three are satisfying the requirements of diffusion. Clear? Which are the three parameters? Solubility of the gases, thickness of the diffusion membrane, and lastly the concentration gradient. Next, moving on is the third step. But before going to the third step of respiration, you can see this diffusion occurring somewhere else at the tissue level. So I am bringing the fourth step now itself. Fourth step and second step are dealing with diffusion. So, because they have the same event, I'm bringing it together, diffusion of gases across the cells or cell membrane. Okay, so there also, see, look here, now I'm focusing here, here diffusion has occurred, here also diffusion is occurring. See here, we have the plasma membrane surrounding the cells, then there's a basement, and then only the endothelium surrounding the blood vessel. So here also you can see the diffusion membrane is very thin. It is, the diffusion membrane is just like the diffusion membrane here. It is the endothelium of the blood vessel, basement, and the plasma membrane of the cell. That is also very, very thin, allowing diffusion. Then also solubility of the gases, both the same gases only are happening, diffusion is happening here also. So it's applicable here also. Then concentration gradient, here also concentration gradient. Here cellular respiration is occurring in the cell. So there's high concentration of carbon dioxide. So the tendency of carbon dioxide to move from the cell to the blood. And there's the blood that is coming there is richly supplied with oxygen. So there's movement of oxygen from the blood vessel into the cells. So the fourth point, diffusion of gases across the cell, also is dealt because it's same to the second point. Okay. Now the third point, very, very important, which can be asked as essay question. Third point is starting from here. We stopped here, no? So here was the first stage, this was the second stage, and the third stage. Now this focus only at oxygen. The oxygen from the alveolus got into the blood. So the arrow down, once again the oxygen from the alveolar space got into the blood. At the same time, what happened with another color I am going to show, let it be red color, carbon dioxide from the blood got into the alveolus. Okay. Why? Because of the concentration gradient, from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration, exchange took place. Now you focus only on this side. The blood is supplied with oxygen, and this blood has to go to the heart. See, it goes to the heart via the pulmonary vein into the left atrium. Then from the left atrium it goes to the left ventricle through an opening over there. Then from the left ventricle the blood will go to the different parts of the body through the aorta. See, follow the green, it is going through the aorta to different parts of the body, that is to the cells. For what? For cellular respiration. Now how is this oxygen in the blood transported? So we can see the blood is being oxygen is being transported via the blood. We saw the route of oxygenated blood. Simultaneously we are going to see the route of deoxygenated or carbon dioxide rich blood. I am going with yellow color. Now here follow this side. Now the carbon dioxide the path is from here down. Okay. Now we saw the carbon dioxide from the cells gets into the blood vessel. Okay. Then from here what happens? It gets into the heart through the superior vena cava. It's going to the heart. See? Yellow arrows. Follow the yellow arrows, the direction. It goes to the right atrium. From the right atrium the impure blood goes to the right ventricle. And from the right ventricle where it goes to the lungs for purification. Got the yellow arrows? So yellow arrows, from where did we start? On the deoxygenated or carbon dioxide rich blood, from where we have to start? Don't group or search for oxygenated blood to start from, deoxygenated blood to start from there. Carbon dioxide is evolved by cellular respiration occurring at the cells. Cellular respiration is occurring, so carbon dioxide is emitted. So that carbon dioxide gets into the bloodstream. From there you carry over. The carbon dioxide is transported via the blood through the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava to the right atrium. From the right atrium goes to right ventricle, and this impure blood from the right ventricle goes through the pulmonary artery where at the alveolus for exchange, for purification. Now here the question comes, how is this carbon dioxide transported via the blood? These are gases, how can they be transported? And I spoke about the solubility. They are not very soluble. slightly only we can say in terms of solubility, they are not very soluble like any other gases, especially oxygen. Okay, but more than oxygen, carbon dioxide is more soluble, nearly 25 times more soluble than oxygen. So, how is the oxygen and carbon dioxide transported via blood? So, the third step deals with this side. It is occurring simultaneously in the diagram. You can see this side is indicating carbon dioxide transport. I am putting in box, and this side is simultaneously indicating oxygen transport. And look, in the picture they are occurring at the same location, same region. So, this is brought together in the third point, transport of gases. And here we can specify which are the gas, oxygen and carbon dioxide. Again, to be very specific, oxygen transport of gases means oxygen from where to where. So, you see your green arrow, from the pulmonary vein to the left atrium, from the left atrium to the left ventricle, from the left ventricle via the systemic arteries, it goes to the cells. So, we follow the green arrow for oxygen. Okay. Then for carbon dioxide transport, follow the yellow arrows. The transport of gases from the cells via the superior inferior vena cava to the right atrium, from the right atrium to the right ventricle, and from the right ventricle through the pulmonary artery to the lungs. How it is transported? Anyway, it is transported in the liquid form. How are these gases transported? So, we are going to check the transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide through the fluid connective tissue called blood. How it is transported? Very, very important essay question. The third point. So, let us do it on a separate side. And this I am going to use very schematic and easy representations for you to get the entire essay. So, first let us deal with oxygen transport. And let this be the RBC. We know in lower classes we have learned the RBC has a component called hemoglobin which carries oxygen. But is all the oxygen carried by this hemoglobin? Most of the oxygen is carried. So, let us see why and how much of this oxygen is transported via the RBC. So, I drew the RBC, I just drew only one RBC, it is understood there is a hemoglobin component in it. Now, the oxygen I put, this oxygen, only 3% of this oxygen dissolves in plasma. So, I think the blackboard is the plasma, the fluid part, and this RBC is representing this one representation of all the RBCs. And remaining 97% of the oxygen gets into the RBC, got into the RBC, where it combines with hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. What is this? Oxyhemoglobin. So, once again, oxygen is less soluble in water. So, you must say that chemical property of oxygen is very less soluble in water or less soluble in fluid, that is our plasma. Only 3% of oxygen dissolves in plasma. Remaining 97% of the oxygen combines with hemoglobin to form the substance called oxyhemoglobin. That is all. Oxygen transport is complete, but not complete fully. Next, moving on to carbon dioxide transport. Carbon dioxide transport. As we know, carbon dioxide is more soluble than oxygen. Again, I am going to represent the RBC with same representation with yellow because I have indicated initially yellow color RBC. Okay. Now, carbon dioxide I am going to represent with pink color, carbon dioxide. It is more soluble than oxygen in water or in plasma. So, 7% dissolves in plasma. And the remaining 93% gets into the RBC. Again, there is a bifurcation. Of this 93%, 70% of this carbon dioxide combines with water to form an acid called carbonic acid. And the remaining 20 to 25%. So, if I add up all the percentage, it should be 100. So, I will take 23%. In your text is given 20 to 25. I am going to take 23, middle figure. 23% of the carbon dioxide combines with hemoglobin to form, here we saw oxygen combines with hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. So, here what carbon dioxide combines with hemoglobin to form? What's the tendency for you to say? Carboxyhemoglobin. Wrong. Carbaminohemoglobin. The name I am writing here, carbaminohemoglobin. It's not carboxyhemoglobin. There's a tendency to go with this. Here oxygen combines with hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. So, there's a tendency there also. Carbon dioxide combines with hemoglobin to form carboxyhemoglobin. That rhyming. No, it is carbaminohemoglobin. And I told you the remaining 70% combines with water. This is a very, very important reaction. I cannot bring it to the corner. I'll raise it because this is a very, very important reaction. 70% of carbon dioxide combines with water to form carbonic acid, and very, very important, here there is an enzyme that catalyzes this reaction. I am giving with the color that stands out. That enzyme is called carbonic anhydrase. The specialty of this enzyme is the fastest enzyme on the world, in the earth surface. The fastest enzyme is carbonic anhydrase. It catalyzes this conversion of or association of carbon dioxide with water to form carbonic acid. Immediately what happens to this carbonic acid? It dissociates into H plus ions and bicarbonate ions. See, the reaction is not there as carbonic acid is not complete. It immediately dissociates into the two ions, H plus ions, hydrogen ions and bicarbonate ions. And then what happens is bicarbonate ions diffuses out into the plasma. So, it came into the plasma. So, once again carbon dioxide transport is little more complex. Carbon dioxide is more soluble in water, therefore 77% of the carbon dioxide dissolves in plasma. Remaining 93% of the carbon dioxide gets into the RBC, then it bifurcates. 70% of the carbon dioxide combines with the water to form carbonic acid, H2CO3, carbonic acid. This is catalyzed by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase. What's the specialty? It's the fastest enzyme. It catalyzes the reaction at a very high speed, and this carbonic acid immediately dissociates into H plus ions and bicarbonate ions. And these bicarbonate ions, they dissociate or not dissociate, they diffuse out from the RBC into the plasma. Now, the other part is 23% or 20 to 25, I am going with 23% of the carbon dioxide combines with the hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin. It is not carboxyhemoglobin, I am reiterating, not carboxyhemoglobin, it is carbaminohemoglobin, split in 3 words. Okay. This is the route or the ways in which carbon dioxide is transported. So, once you complete this diagram and explain the different association, you have to conclude. Therefore, I am doing carbon dioxide. Therefore, carbon dioxide is transported in how many ways? Look at the ways. In 3 ways. One as carbon dioxide itself in the plasma. One as the bicarbonates where in the plasma. And third as carbaminohemoglobin by the RBC. So, that should be specifically written. Carbon dioxide is transported in 3 ways. 1 as carbon dioxide, 2 as bicarbonate ions, and 4 as carboxyhemoglobin. and specify as carbon dioxide in the plasma. Then as bicarbonate again in the plasma. Then as carbaminohemoglobin in the RBC. And don't forget the percentage. How much percentage is in the plasma? 7%. How much percentage as bicarbonates? 70%. And how much percentage in the form of carbaminohemoglobin? 23%. Calculate all this. 7 plus 70 plus 23. Did you get your 100%? This is how you have to conclude this essay. So, once again, carbon dioxide transport, very simple. You should have the symbolic representation. And the essay is not complete. You explain the symbolic representations, showed the different, concluded the different ways in which it's transported, and you verified the percentage and you got it 100%, and finally you are terminating with one thing. What else is association of this carbon dioxide with hemoglobin? Where is the carbon dioxide getting associated with the hemoglobin? It is occurring here. This carbon dioxide is combining with hemoglobin where? In the tissues. So, this is happening in the tissues. What is happening? Association of carbon dioxide with hemoglobin is occurring in the tissues. So, finally you are going to say the conditions that are favorable for bringing about this association. Once again I am reiterating, bringing about the association of the carbon dioxide with hemoglobin is brought about by some factors at the site of the tissues. What are those sites? They are, I'll just give it in telegraphic form. Definitely, you know, if you compare the amount of oxygen to carbon dioxide, which is more, carbon dioxide is more. So, one factor, the carbon dioxide is high, the gradient, carbon dioxide gradient is high, so oxygen gradient is low. Okay, this cannot be equally high. When one is high, carbon dioxide is high, definitely oxygen concentration is very low. And also at the tissues, the temperature is high and the hydrogen ion concentration is also high. So, the factors favorable for the association of carbon dioxide with hemoglobin at the tissues are these. Oxygen concentration is low, carbon dioxide concentration is high, temperature is high, and the hydrogen ion concentration is high. Now I am going to prefix before the gases, I am going to prefix with violet P before the gases. What does? Now it is complete. The partial pressure of oxygen is low, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high, the temperature is high, and the hydrogen ion concentration high. What is this partial pressure? In a mixture of gases, anyway, the atmospheric gases are not just oxygen or carbon, it is a mixture of gases. So, the pressure contributed by each gas is called partial pressure. So, gases is a mixture, we can't separate the gases, it is a mixture, and the pressure exerted by each gas is known as partial pressure. So, we have to talk in terms of partial pressure, which is indicated as a small p at the prefix of the gas. So, it will be complete only if I write like this. The factors favorable for the association of carbon dioxide and hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin at the tissue level are low partial pressure of oxygen, high partial pressure of carbon dioxide, high temperature, and high hydrogen ion concentration. So, that is complete for carbon dioxide transport. So, if carbon dioxide transport is asked for essay, remember children, if carbon dioxide is asked as an essay question, you have to first incorporate the symbolic representation, and just by symbolic representation it is not complete, you are explaining. The symbolic representation just serving as a mind map. So, you are explaining like how I explained carbon dioxide 7% dissolves in plasma, and remaining 93% gets into the RBC, of the 70% combines with water to form carbonic acid, then that dissociates to form hydrogen and bicarbonate. Bicarbonate gets transported into the plasma. Then the remaining 23% combines with hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin. So, that from the symbolic representation or mind map, you are developing the different components formed for the transport. Then finally you are ending up with the different ways by which carbon dioxide is transported, what I've given in yellow. Okay, you have to incorporate this as your second paragraph. Therefore, carbon dioxide is transported in 3 ways and give the 3 ways. 7% as carbon dioxide in the plasma, 70% as bicarbonates in the plasma, 23% as carbaminohemoglobin in the RBC, and just verify whether it's coming up to 100%. That's its second paragraph. And the third key point of the third paragraph is what are the factors that favors? Factors favoring what? The association of carbon dioxide with hemoglobin. Where this association of carbon dioxide with hemoglobin is occurring? It is occurring at the tissue. So remember the site at tissue. What are the conditions favorable? I have already indicated, but once again let me write which are the conditions they are favorable. The partial pressure of oxygen is low. The partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high. The temperature is high and the hydrogen ion concentration is high. These 4 factors should be mentioned. This is happening at the tissue. So these are the conditions at the tissue which is favoring this association. You can also talk in terms of dissociation. If it's dissociation, you must talk in with respect to how is the hemoglobin dissociated from the, how is the oxygen dissociated from the hemoglobin. Okay, if you are talking in terms of association, carbon dioxide with hemoglobin, or you can talk in terms of dissociation. At the tissue, what happens is, I am just giving just a reverse. If that is confusing, you don't add that, but it is also given in terms of dissociation. We see that oxyhemoglobin came at the tissues. It came at the tissues. If you recollect the diagram, here oxyhemoglobin came. Now this should get dissociated so that the oxygen comes here. Okay, so this dissociation into oxygen plus hemoglobin is favored by these factors. Or you can talk in terms of association. Association is the, at the same time what happens is the carbon dioxide from the tissues, they get into the blood, and in the blood what happens is carbon dioxide combines with hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin. Okay. So you can talk in terms of association or you can talk in terms of dissociation, because association of carbon dioxide with hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin is occurring at the tissue, or the dissociation of oxyhemoglobin to form oxygen and hemoglobin is occurring at the tissues. Because this got dissociated, only this oxygen came here. Okay, it got unloaded and carbon dioxide got loaded. So here its unloading process took place, unloading of the hemoglobin and loading of the hemoglobin. Okay, a boat came with people and the people got onto the bank and the very same boat got loaded with another set of people. So the boat here can be considered too as hemoglobin. It came with oxygen. The oxygen went to the bank, that is it went like the people, it went out. And the very same boat got loaded with another set of people. So the first set of people was oxygen. The second set, the very same hemoglobin on the boat carried the second set of people, that is carbon dioxide. So one boat ferrying between 2 areas. I hope you have understood with this analogy of the boat, the country boat which loads and unloads people, the very same boat. So the role of the boat is by the hemoglobin. So here it was unloaded, dissociated, unloading the people. That is dissociation, and the very same boat was loaded with carbon dioxide with another set of people, that is association. So you can talk in terms of association or dissociation, but remember which gas. Association of carbon dioxide with hemoglobin, or you can talk in terms of dissociation of oxyhemoglobin into oxygen and hemoglobin at the tissue level. And the factors favorable, once and for all I am saying, partial pressure of oxygen is low, partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high, temperature is high, and the hydrogen ion concentration is high. Now moving on to oxygen. I left it halfway, oxygen. So we will follow the same format. See the format given here, I am going to follow the same for oxygen transport. The first is a symbolic mind map for you to get this correct events. Second, you have conclude therefore the different ways by which the particular gas is transported. And third, the factors favoring association or dissociation. Same thing I am incorporating into oxygen transport. So oxygen transport we learned, it's more simple. So I am following that scheme what I gave. First you are giving the symbolic mind map. Oxygen is less soluble in water, therefore only 3% dissolves in the plasma. Then the remaining 97% gets into the RBC where they combine with hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. Finished. So that's your first paragraph. It comprises this mind map. Mind map is only in your mind, it need not be drawn, but it should be given in statement. All what is in your mind map should flow into your fingers. Okay, so this is very good representation. Okay, your textbook does not have. So first is your mind map. Mind map which gives you the information, the steps. Second, therefore, the ways in which oxygen is transported. Here we can only two ways. One, 3% as oxygen dissolved in plasma. Okay, and 97% of oxygen combines with hemoglobin and it is transported in which form? As oxyhemoglobin. I hope this is clear. Okay, so therefore oxygen is transported in two ways. 3% as oxygen itself in the plasma dissolved state and 97% combines with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. Very easy is the oxygen transport. And lastly, what you are saying? The factors favoring. Factors favoring, give importance to association. Association of oxygen with hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. What are the factors? Just the reverse of that. Or in terms of dissociation. So in dissociation what you will say, this carbaminohemoglobin should get dissociated to form carbon dioxide and hemoglobin. Okay, so what are the factors and where it occurs? Remember, this occurs at the alveolus. There it was tissues, here it occurs at the alveolus. Remember that, at the alveolus. So just the reverse. Here partial pressure of oxygen is high, whereas partial pressure of carbon dioxide is low, temperature is low, and the H plus ion concentration is low. So the factors favoring the association of the oxygen with hemoglobin at the alveolus level is favored by these factors. Partial pressure of oxygen is very high, partial pressure of carbon dioxide is low, temperature is low, and the H plus ion concentration is low. Again, this can be talked in terms of dissociation. Like the boat was bringing some people. So the boat was bringing is carbon dioxide. Now the boat has to get unloaded or dissociation should occur. So carbon dioxide was unloaded. And this boat only was used to board or to load oxygen. So you can talk in terms of association or dissociation. I feel you go with association, so you will not get confused. But if suppose there is a 1 mark question, it can be asked in terms of dissociation. But remember the site. The site is always alveolus for dissociation of carbon dioxide. So let's look at this association with respect to that schematic diagram, 17.3 diagram. So now we are dealing with, I am only concentrating at association. See here, association is taking place of the oxygen with hemoglobin is taking place where at the alveolus, and association of carbon dioxide with hemoglobin is taking place where at the body tissue. So don't get confused. Association is taking place of oxygen with hemoglobin at the alveolus, and association of carbon dioxide with hemoglobin is taking place at the tissues. Clear? Now incorporating it into our first steps. So now bringing back the steps. We completed all the steps. breathing, as I told you, it's pulmonary ventilation or inhalation and exhalation, which we saw in the previous video. Then we saw diffusion of gases occurring at the alveolus, diffusion of gases occurring at the tissues. Then we saw transport of gases, namely oxygen transport, carbon dioxide transport, very, very important. And once again I am reiterating, it has to have 3 paragraphs. One is a schematic diagram which shows the various events. Second is, therefore, you are concluding which and all ways it is transported. And lastly, you are saying the factors which are favoring its association with hemoglobin. And last, what we know is cellular respiration. Right from lower classes, we know what happens to this oxygen that has come to the cells. So, we see the oxygen has come to the cells. What is happening in the cells? The cells have glucose, which is taken up by nutrients, by nutrition. This glucose should be broken up by oxygen, in the presence of oxygen, to form carbon dioxide, water and energy. So, this is cellular respiration. So, what happens is, in the cells we have glucose. The glucose is obtained by the process, by another system called the digestive system. Okay, this glucose should be broken down in the presence of oxygen for us to get energy, and the other byproducts are carbon dioxide and water. This is called cellular respiration, and this is an example of aerobic respiration. So, this is cellular respiration, which is at the end of the schematic representation. So, when you connect, children, see, the first step, breathing is occurring here, then diffusion at the alveolus is occurring here, then transport of gases, remember, transport of carbon dioxide is occurring on your left hand side, sorry, on your right. That means actually talking from the view of the patient, it is the left hand side, and on the right hand side of the person taking class, it is oxygen. Or you talk in terms of the position of the heart. Better you don't talk with respect to writing or drawing, you talk with position of the heart. This is the right and this is the left. But when you talk about, when you are drawing or writing, this is left hand side and right hand side. So, you go with the heart. The right side, it is dealing with the carbon dioxide transport. The left side is dealing with oxygen transport. Then here, diffusion of gases at the cellular level. So, I hope you have understood. Correlate with this schematic representation, which is associating two different systems, circulatory system with respiratory system. Without circulatory system, without understanding the two pathways of the circulatory system, this will not be clear. I hope you have understood the entire sequence, especially oxygen and carbon dioxide transport. For the very same, I will be giving you handouts for oxygen and carbon dioxide transport. I hope today's session is clear. Thank you.